Welcome to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. Your co-hosts, Jason Smith and Bryan Bibbo, will inspire and teach you how to prosper in your mind, body, and spirit, not just your financial life. Joining forces with field experts, Jason and Bryan are here to help you focus on what matters most in your life, living well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the J.L. Smith and Prosperity Capital Advisors Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. I'm excited for today's topic. We're here to talk about protecting your mental health in a high-pressure world. And our guest today, Aneta Kuzma, a leadership coach who helps high-achieving professionals move from burnout and overperformance into alignment, peace, and purpose-driven leadership, drawing on 25 years of executive experience, an MBA, nervous system regulation, a spiritual and a somatic practices she's developed with Sacred Success, framework to helping leaders redefine success and lead with clarity and grounded power through coaching, speaking, and her book, Live the Width of Your Life. She guides ambitious professionals to align ambition with soul and create sustainable impact. Aneta, grateful to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Bryan. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so why don't we start? I think it's awfully fitting for the conversation we're about to talk about with burnout and everything else. Let's just, with the audience, take a deep breath through our nose, and whatever we had before we came here, let it out through your mouth. That should get us ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to dive right into things here. Is we shared with you work with many successful people over the years, and many struggle with anxiety and stress, and I have myself too over the years. But why do you see that like high performers, especially professionals and entrepreneurs, tend to burn out even when things look so good from the outside, from a third person's perspective?
Yeah, it's such a great question, right? I think it's one that many of us struggle with. And, the World Health Organization has identified burnout as a chronic illness right now. So they see it as something that probably is here to stay, which is unfortunate. But I think for a couple of reasons. One, I think many of us have been conditioned from a very young age that success looks like, being a high achiever, doing everything well, being the first, getting the external recognition from our parents, our teachers, our leaders when we do a good job. And then there's always like a carrot right in front of us, the next thing. And I think many of us continue to work at a really high pace. The demands have not gone down. I don't see them letting up ever. And we don't take any time to celebrate our wins. We usually don't pause long enough to say that I did a good job. We just change the goalposts. We adjust it, and then we just continue on. And I think that, like anything, if we continue to drive at one speed without rest, without pausing, without creating healthy boundaries for ourselves, we will find ourselves in the situation where our body says, you cannot override my signals to you any longer. I will continue to make them more known to you in whatever way that is until we actually are forced to pay attention.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And some of the things I've dealt with in my personal life and everything else. When I started this company, I was an intern doing tax returns, and now, being the president and everything else, a lot of things come along the way. But over the years, the more things you take on, the better you are at it. You ask to do more, and it just keeps building on, building on. And the thing about that stuck out most to me is your body usually gives you signals. And whether it's exhaustion at night, hey, it's 8 o'clock at night, you don't have energy anymore, or you're starting to feel down, like sick more, all those kind of things. And I was one to ignore a lot of those signals till you kind of hit that brick wall. So, when we think about that is, what other signals have you seen people experience when it comes to that burnout that their body's trying to tell them, hey, change course, slow down, do something different?
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we look at a physical, it could be that you struggle sleeping, So many people have a hard time staying restful, having a restful sleep through the night. They might find themselves waking up in the middle of the night. They might wake up in the morning still feeling exhausted, not well rested. That's usually a pretty good signal. They might start to get sick more often. So their immunity starts to suffer a little bit mentally. They might find themselves feeling depressed, anxious. Their thoughts are racing. It's really hard to get control. They might say that the focus and the clarity is no longer there, what they had before. And then emotionally, dysregulation as well. I think that we have to look at ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We are whole human beings. And from an emotional perspective, it looks like not being able to regulate, having something that would be very minor, maybe set you off in a way that you wouldn't normally. And, starting a fight, not being able to regulate at work, not, leveraging the filters that we all know to apply and what's appropriate. Sometimes we just can't do that in the same way. So I think it can come in any of these ways, but just checking in and saying, how am I responding that's out of the ordinary? And what is my body trying to tell me?
Yeah. And you nailed the first one, especially with sleeping.
Yeah.
All the reports out there, how important it is to get the most amount of sleep. And what I've learned over the years, I've changed some of those behaviors. I think a lot of us have a cell phone maybe next to our bed or charging it next to our bed. And like, that's one of the worst things. So,
Yeah.
I think it's also how many times they say people wake up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. So it's more of that. What I've purposely done to prepare is like, hey, I'll drink some water, but like an hour and a half before I stop the water intake, go to the bathroom before. And if I do happen to wake up in the middle of the night, the worst thing I ever did was when I would look at my phone and look at the time,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the light from the phone's throwing me off, and then I'm thinking about the time. I've got an old school alarm clock now, so if
Yeah.
I need that, I actually just look at that. But the other thing is I try not to look at the time either because your thoughts will race so much, and you'll think about what's going on in the next day. Like you have to train yourself on this stuff, and it's those little small intentionalities that you can do and listen to your body to stop burnout. What would you say are some other stuff, intentionalities we can do to maybe stop or catch the burnout or change some of our behaviors with some of the things you said?
Yeah, I want to just stay on the sleep thing for 1 second because I think it's so important and I don't think that we can talk about it enough. I love that you're creating these routines for yourself. I tell people, if you're a parent or you remember being small yourself, our parents did not throw us in our bed, close the door, and say, good luck. There was a whole routine. There was a bath, there was a bedtime story. Maybe they wanted you to lay next to them and talk for a little bit. We were winding down. And really, I say the best bedtime routine mimics nature. If you are confused about what to do, look at what nature does. The sun starts to set, right? Goes down. So we could start to dim the lights in the house. The temperatures drop. Turn down your thermostat. The animals are not running around. There's no bunnies at 9 o'clock at night running around. They're getting ready for sleep. They're probably asleep already, right? So the same thing with us. Wind down. Having a book, like a real old fashioned book on your nightstand to read a couple pages, not a business book, not a self help book, just something fun. Those are great things. And like you said, really starting to put the devices away. Do not keep it in your room. Keep it somewhere else. Turn the light off because once we look at that phone, it does reset our circadian rhythm. It's like turning the lights on or, staring into the sun. So that's definitely an important thing to do.
Yeah, that was one of the most powerful things I heard about sleep because
Yeah.
it hit home for me because I have a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son.
Yeah.
And obviously, before we go to bed, it's the hugs, it's the kisses. Hey, put them into bed, tuck them in. And then also, like you said, if there's one thing we can take from sleep, and what you said is like, what does nature do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The sun goes down, like you said, the bunnies were sleeping. We need to be following that. There's so many distractions in the world, and
Yeah.
how can we get away from those distractions and sleep better and longer?
Absolutely.
And a lot of this conversation is related to more of the mental health, the
Mhm.
burnout and how you're feeling, the anxiety, the stress.
Yeah.
It's all how mentally we're feeling, and then the brain tells the body kind of, hey, how they're feeling from there. But in your experience, what are some of the most damaging things to when it comes to mental health, excuse me, external pressures, work demands, expectations, internal pressures like the ones we put on ourselves that we think we need to achieve, setting the next mountaintop again and again. What would you say here?
Yeah, I would say yes to every single thing that you stated, Brian. And I think for that reason, it's important for us to start every single day with intention. The best thing you could do for your nervous system when you wake up is allow it to slowly come back online. We start hopefully from a deep sleep. Many people reach for their phones and they start answering email, or they log onto their computer or they just jump in the shower quickly, get ready, drink some coffee, get ready for work and take off. And if we could just slow that down, even by 15 minutes, starting off with 15 minutes of intentional quiet, savor your morning beverage, take your time, go outside, get some sunlight, which is helpful. Allow your body to do what it's supposed to do. We are designed, our body is so intelligent. Like, we are overriding the things that are just come naturally. If we just do, remove all the technology and just think about what did we used to do in the past? What do some societies, or what do we do on vacation when we go? It's like, these are the things that we can do. So one of the biggest issues with mental health is that we can't quiet our mind. We have 50 to 80,000 thoughts on average per day per human.
Wow.
Most of those are repeat, and 80% of those are negative. So we have to choose intentionally what we want to focus on. That's why I have a paper planner, a journal that I use all the time. It starts my day with, what are my top priorities? What am I grateful for? What is the one word intention that I have? What are the things that I want to get done today? And where do I plug them into my calendar? How will I incorporate self-care for myself today, whether it's a walk or the sunshine or time to take a break, engage with a friend? The more intentional we are about the things that make us human, the things that we actually need, and we focus on being before we start doing and taking action, the more likely we're going to set ourselves up for a day with more peace, more joy, and probably a lot more clarity and production as well, just as a byproduct.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to echo something I actually said. I was in the barber shop today talking with a few guys, and they were talking about problems and everything else. And I've heard this before, so it wasn't a thought that I had. I said, the only reason you have problems today or you're having these conversations because you woke up this morning.
Yeah.
There was 250,000 people that didn't wake up this morning, like that had died yesterday on this earth. That's roughly the statistic. And when you start from a place of gratitude every day and
Yeah.
you get grateful for what you do have, your life changes. The only reason, Aneta and you and I are having this conversation today, we both woke up this morning. Inside of that's a blessing, and we tend to take that stuff for granted.
Yeah.
You also talked about the thought of like, hey, let me go grab my phone, and that's the first thing I'm going to look at. And that's a bad habit to get into. I've gotten to the point where I've never put my work email on my phone because I already knew how much I loved work and was addicted to it, more or less. It gets me going, but it's so hard to separate and have that life work balance and be there with the family and the stuff that I enjoy. Because if Saturday night I get an email from XYZ person, I'm going to want to answer it. But if it's not even on my phone, well, guess what? I don't see it. I can
Yeah.
separate those kind of things. And when I drive to work, one of the things, and this is stuff I just learned over the years, and I just want to share with the audience, is I don't even put music on. I just have the silence. And it's like a 15 to 18-minute drive. And that silence helps me just mentally prepare for the day because there's so many things going on in the world.
Yeah, I love that. And, those moments of clarity and quiet, like the car, why not take advantage of that? They're so far and, that we don't always have them. So being able to just rest with that. And you're right, it's such a blessing just to wake up. Like, the first thing you can do is, before you even open your eyes, you can just say, thank you for the gift of today. Thank you that I have a sound mind and an able body, and I'm able to breathe on my own, and I had a cozy bed and protection from the elements in my home. Like, there's so many things that we can be grateful for if we're just intentional about the practice.
Yeah, and we let the smallest things in the world upset us too. Like, hey,
Yeah.
someone cut in front of me in the line at Starbucks or something so small. And
Yeah.
when you put that into perspective, it's like, what? Why would I even get upset about that? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You brought up something in there, and I think this is a key thing that I want to go over is you brought up the nervous system and the
Mhm.
nervous system regulation.
Mhm.
For some of the audience that's not familiar with that kind of concept, what role does the nervous system play in the burnout, the stress, or the emotions that we have?
Yeah. So the nervous system controls so much of our body, all those things that we talked about before: physical, mental, emotional. And so I try to break it up as simply as possible. So we've all felt feelings of calm. And when you feel calm, maybe you're in flow, maybe you're just sitting around and you feel like really just good. That is the parasympathetic nervous system. It's called a rest and digest. That's the part of the nervous system that we were created to spend most of our life in. Then, if you've ever experienced rage, anger, anxiety, fear, worry, all these things, these emotions that typically make our heart race, they quicken our breath. You might start to feel physical sensations. You might feel your body, your blood pressure start to increase, your body get hot. That is the sympathetic nervous system. And typically, there are 4 stress responses when you're in the sympathetic: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When you're in fight, you get combative, defensive. You want to argue. It's hard for you to allow, you want to feel right. And if you have a flight response, you might be the person that just leaves a fight. You leave, like you physically leave the room, slam the door, get in the car, whatever it is. Like, people flee. The third one is freeze. Those are the people quiet. You get the silent treatment. They just disengage. They start to become almost disembodied. That's the freeze response. And then the fawn is the people pleasers. They're the ones that want to make the situation better. They want to avoid the conflict. They're going to be the harmonizers at work that are going to try to bring everyone together. Each of us has one of those 4 stress responses, and sometimes we might have 1 or 2 that we go to. And they could be different at work because we tend to be better behaved at work than at home, or, at home. So the reason this matters is because we want to stay in the parasympathetic. When we do, our brain functions as it should. We're using the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to make good decisions. It allows us to have focus and clarity. It allows us to think critically. It allows us to pause before we choose to respond. That's the state we want to be in. When we are in the sympathetic nervous system and we're having these emotions, if you were to look at a brain scan, the frontal cortex actually goes offline. We are in the limbic and the amygdala part of the brain, the emotional center and the fear center of the brain. And we were designed this way because if you are in that state, historically, if we were in a situation where we needed to run really fast to get away from someone or an animal, or if your kid is under a car and you need the power to lift it, you don't want to second guess your choice. That's why that happens. But that is not a healthy place to be, typically at work or in our personal relationships. So that's why it's important to do the things that you need to regulate. You and I started this with breath work. You can do 3 deep breaths that we just did, in through the nose, out through the mouth, a really slow exhale, and move from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. You can start to look around the room and find 3 things that you see and just say them mentally. And you can calm yourself down and start to bring your brain to the place where you want it to be. So there's so many tools. And physically, it is just not healthy for us to stay in that state for so long because we pump cortisol through our system, and cortisol stays in our system for 24 hours. So if you go to bed pumping cortisol and you wake up jumping, looking at your phone, looking at the computer, getting aggravated in traffic, you're basically staying on this cortisol drip continuously. And that is not healthy for us.
Yeah, that was an amazing articulation on the nervous system regulation, so I appreciate that, and the other thing in there, the fawn, like, I've never heard it called that before, so
Mhm.
that was a cool indicator of what you were saying there. I it reminds me of my son, like, my son, 8-year-old young boy, and he has that energy of a young boy, he bounces off the walls, and there'll be times where I just have to sit in his bed, and it's like regulating his nervous system. I just be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
it's time, let's lay down." You get in a sleeping position instead of
Yeah.
laying all over the place, you know how the kids do things,
Yeah.
and I had him lay flat, and I was like, "Let's breathe through our nose, out
Mm.
through our mouths, and you know what we're gonna do right now? We're gonna focus on sleeping because how important sleeping is." And I've had to do that exercise, I've kinda just created it with him over
Yeah.
the years, but when we actually do that, within a few minutes, he falls right asleep because he's
Yeah.
focusing on the sleeping and making sure that he's just breathing and letting things go from the day. I mean, even we're talking about an 8-year-old, or if you're 80 years old, we're all human beings and we face these things. So
Ugh.
if I'm feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, and I'm just maybe raging or whatever it may be, what are 2 or 3 things that you would say would help me or our audience regain balance, or what we should be doing? I've hummed before to make my vagus nerve. I've heard that works too, and that seems to
Yeah.
help me. But what would you say are some common ones that would be critical?
Yeah, I would say if you're in burnout, it's important to start to put things in place to course correct right now, but also to start putting things in place into your schedule for sustainability, because you have to deal with the short term impact and then also the longer term. So, for the short term, what can you do to pull yourself more into regulation is breath work. You can absolutely breathe, focusing in on meditation. You can laugh. You can listen to certain music that actually will regulate. You can hum, like you said. You can walk outside. Nature is great. The vagus nerve actually sends 80% of the signals to our brain. And when we are dysregulated or burned out, our vagus nerve is sending signals to the brain that we are not safe, and for it to pump more stress hormones in the body. So anything you can do that we talk about that actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which starts at the brain stem, goes down the throat, through the heart, through the lungs, through the digestive system, into our extremities, will be helpful. Now, longer term, what I would say, because you use the word balance, I like to say balance or alignment. Typically, we find ourselves in the state of burnout is because our daily choices don't align with our values. And what I mean is that if your family is a top value for you, and you do not make time to come home for dinner, or you're missing all your kids' events, or you're not spending time with your partner, you will feel out of balance and you're probably over indexing at work or somewhere else. If health is important to you, and yet you're not drinking your water, you're not getting your steps, you're not getting your sleep, you're not making time to go take care of yourself, you're not eating lunch, or eating on time, you will feel out of balance. And so the first thing I do with my clients is to say, let's take a look at what your schedule looks like. Let's do some values work to identify what's actually important to you in your life. And then open up their calendar and say, is this represented? How are you showing up for yourself? Because this is our one chance. This is life. And so every single day we have an opportunity to make sure that live in alignment, and the alignment, it will create that sense of balance. So that's where we create some routines and say, what do you need to do for yourself? Sleep is always the first place to start, but what else is lacking? Is it your food? Is it your exercise? Is it that you don't carve enough time for your relationships? That's really important. Do you not have enough alone time? Time to just be quiet and to think. So every person is different because our values could be different. And so the short term, all those tools we talked about, and longer term, really figuring out how do you design your days and your life to be in complete alignment. That will help you move out of burnout and also keep you out of it.
Yeah, and you're spot on because I've dealt with that in life also. And the day is full of hundreds of choices, and you're making those choices. Everybody goes, "Oh, I have to go to work today." No, you get to go to work today. And also, you as an individual are choosing to go to work today. You don't have to drive that car to work, you're choosing to do that. You chose to get up this morning at a certain time. Life is full of a bunch of choices. And I think the main thing is when we realize we can change those choices to align what our goals are, what we're passionate about, then life starts falling a lot more in place and we're not as burnt out and we get off that track of the stress and the anxiety because you're finding the purpose and the passion. And Aneta, I can hear it from you. Like I can hear the passion in your voice. I can hear your knowledge, the
Mhm.
years of expertise that you have. And I just want to get and understand, like you made a choice to jump on the podcast with us today, and I appreciate that. But why are you so passionate about this? What
Mm.
got you here?
Yeah. I mean, I was burned out. I was that corporate executive who was burned out. I was working super hard at work. I was trying to be a great mom and a great wife. I was going to MBA school full time. I was doing all the things. I was training for a marathon, like just like kept adding more and more to my plate. And I think as a distraction, probably
Mhm.
technique. And I had to bring myself out of that place. And then when I learned so much about here's how my body naturally heals, here's what I need to do for myself, I just knew that I had to start sharing that with others. And so I went deep on, got my yoga teacher certification and meditation and mindfulness and then somatic breath work. And the more I learned, the more passionate I was about it because all of these things are available to us. You don't have to go spend a bunch of money. You don't have to go live in an ashram. You don't have to go do a medieval, walk in the El Camino. I mean, I would love to, but
Yep.
all these things are available right here, right now. We can make those choices and it doesn't require a lot of time. But sometimes we just need someone else to give us permission and to remind us that we have agency. We can make those choices for ourselves. And when I work with my clients and I see what they're able to do, and that they suddenly have more joy, more purpose, more passion in their life, those are the keys to longevity. If we look at the blue zones, the reason people live so long in the blue zones, that's because they have their purpose, their ikigai, their pura vida, they're eating whole foods, they're sleeping, they're in community, they're focused in on family, they have some faith practice. These are not anything to do with technology. These are all things that have been with us since the beginning of time. It's just remembering that this is always available to all of us.
Yeah. And I appreciate your passion in it. And we got to create non-negotiables in our life. Stuff that we make sure no matter what. It's like it's setting boundaries. And I've
Yeah.
heard you speak on setting boundaries, and I want you to say elaborate on it in a minute, but it's like there has to be non-negotiables in your life. And whether it's eating dinner with your family every night or not working on Saturdays and Sundays and doing what you love, whether it's being out in nature, yoga, motorcycle riding, everyone's different. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you got to set those boundaries and have non-negotiables in your life. So would you elaborate on a little bit of like, hey, how can someone set boundaries and why that's important?
Yeah, I mean, a boundary can be as simple as a commitment that you make to yourself. Sometimes when we use the word boundary, we think that we're cutting someone off or we have to do something that feels uncomfortable because we're not very good at doing it. But if you reframe it and say, what are the commitments that you make to yourself? And you have a strong why for it. Like maybe, once a week, twice a week, you leave at a certain time. And because you go and do something for yourself, for your family. Or, like you said, on the weekend, maybe you say, Sunday's a day of rest. It's my family time. It's my time with God. I'm not going to work. That is a commitment that you make to yourself. Maybe it's, hey, during lunchtime, I'm going to put my do not disturb on or turn my notifications off because I want to be able to just sit quietly. And that's going to help me be a better leader for the rest of the day. And then you give permission to other people on your team to do the same. I don't know what those things are, but I think that everybody has different sets. And I would say start small. If you're not comfortable ever putting yourself first or even putting yourself on the list at all, start with something small. What is that one thing that you can do for yourself? And then let people know about it. Have an accountability partner, someone that you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to really try to walk around the building at lunchtime and just give myself half an hour to myself and I'm going to block the time on my calendar. Check in on me, see how I'm doing, see if I'm staying accountable to myself. And maybe someone else is going to do the same thing. But that's how I approach boundaries. I say, turn it into a commitment that you make to yourself, and then share and acknowledge it with others so that they can help you and support you.
Yeah. You went from being that high level executive running into burnout, and
Yeah.
there had to have been setting boundaries along the way. What would you say is something you've implemented, one or two items that you implemented in your life that had got you to a better place from feeling that burned out anxiety? I just want to hear your personal experience.
Something funny that I did. So I was in banking. So I worked at a bank for 22 years, and I decided I wasn't going to use the fluorescent lights anymore. I brought in like a Himalayan lamp, and I brought in some fresh plants. I brought a yoga ball instead of a chair to sit on. And at lunchtime, I would close the doors and just have the little note that said meditating. And people would come and I would diffuse essential oil. So imagine an office, a senior vice president looking like that. And
Yeah.
people would come into my office and they would just go, oh, I love it in here.
Oh,
And
wow.
they could feel it. And you know what happened? Nobody wanted to go to a conference room. They always wanted to meet in my office. And then other people asked if I wasn't there, if they could use my office to do work or to just quietly sit there or to try to like meditate or breathe themselves. And that was like a small thing I started off with, but it really, like at first people thought it was weird and some people always did. I didn't care, but it really was an indication like this is a safe space. This is a place that is, I'm healing. This is a place that I'm bringing the things that are most important to me into my work environment. And other people, they liked it. And it gave them permission to do the same.
That is awesome. I gotta implement some of those ideas, whatever it means to me, but, like, I could visualize it. You explained it so well, like, I have visualized like I was
Yeah.
in your office, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt that smell. That that is awesome. So
Yeah.
so that's great. And now for people juggling career demands, finances, family responsibilities, I mean, you lived
Yeah.
through that. Um what can we do mentally to make sure? Is there a way we can check in with ourselves to say, "Hey, how am I mentally doing?" Do you think it's just taking time, being present,
Yeah.
intentionality? What would you say?
That's such a great question. I would say first thing in the morning, give yourself space. Um, and whatever that is, some people, maybe it's journaling, asking yourself a question like, how am I doing today? What's my intention? How am I feeling? What's my energy level like? Could be something very basic as you start because we actually don't check in with ourselves very often. And even when we are getting clues that we should, we tend to try to turn that off and override it. So, meditation is a wonderful way to just sit quietly, breath work, a nice gentle walk outside, all these things, journaling, they're wonderful ways to check in. Also, a couple times throughout the day, maybe it's at lunchtime and just say, how do I feel? What's my energy feel like? What happened this morning? In the evening, my journal planner has an evening reflection. And some of the questions that I love on here, what was my favorite part of my day? What was today's act of self care? How did I nourish my body today? What kind of movement did I give myself? How much water did I drink? These are basic, fundamental, like health questions that we can ask ourselves. And if you notice that you're doing great, celebrate it. Go, wow, today was a great day. I took really good care of myself. I was intentional about it. And if it wasn't, without judgment, say, you know what would make tomorrow better? What would make me feel better?
Yeah, I heard a lot of taking time, and I think the concept of meditation, of the people that don't do it, it throws them off a little bit
Yeah.
because they feel like they have to have this perfect setting with this ambiance and everything else. And that helps, don't get me wrong. But just even going into your closet or sitting on the couch, turning off the lights or being in the shower and just taking your time and just meditating right there. It doesn't have to be this sacred spot,
Sure.
or you can do it when you're traveling, wherever it may be. I think it's more of that, just shutting down all the noise, slowing down your mind, and
Yeah.
just taking the time. Do you see yourself, you talked about your room that you had at the office, but is there a common place you meditate? And if you're not there, are you still doing it in other places?
Yeah, I tend to always meditate. I have a little altar and meditation space here in my office. So I can see it. I've got my vision board on there. I have fresh flowers. I've got candles. I have a cushion on the ground and blanket. I like to meditate in the same spot when I can, when I'm home. And in the summertime, I love to meditate outside because I love to hear birds and to hear animals in nature.
Absolutely.
One of the best places that I think to meditate is in a parked car. Like if you're in your car and it's like off and you're just kind of cocooned in, it's so quiet. Like if you're in a garage or wherever, if you have to feel safe, of course. I'm just going to say that, and it's not moving. But like the car is a wonderful place where you're typically comfortable. Maybe you can listen to gentle music in the background if you want to. You feel pretty safe. Nobody's next to you. So you're not really hearing a lot of noise. It tends to be a great place to meditate. Like, so sometimes I tell my clients, before you leave work, just spend a couple of minutes and just allow yourself to like wash off the day. And it's almost like transitioning, on your commute home from work to like your personal life. And the same thing on the way to work. It's like, just give yourself some grace, some space, prepare yourself for the day. You can do it. You park the car and go in. Because sometimes people say, I've got young kids. I've got, a partner that's at home. We've got animals, all these things. It's really hard to find a space that's just my own. Go find it somewhere else. You can do that.
Hey, you just talked about a movable space that you can move anywhere,
There,
right? I love that example.
yeah,
That's powerful. And actually, I find myself doing that from time to time. But now that you say it out loud, it's like you can go park your car in a
yeah,
park if you want
yeah,
to, and keep the doors
yeah,
closed, put on the music. Yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
One of the things I've heard you speak to before was, live life by the length, not by the width. Can
No,
you
by the width, not the length.
sorry, live life by the width, not by the length.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit of what you mean?
Yeah. So I remember hearing a quote by Diane Ackerman, and she said, I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize I just lived the length of it. I want to have lived the width of it. And I thought, what does she mean? And so, what I think she means and what it means for me is we don't get to control how long we live. We don't know how many days we're going to be here. And sometimes people keep saying, oh, once I retire, or once I get to vacation, or once the kids get to college, or once the investment account looks like this, or whatever it is, you're assuming that there is a date that suddenly you're going to be able to do whatever it is that you're delaying. And instead, living the width is this moment, this day, right now, this period of time, this is your life. So, what are you going to do to live the entire day, to not wish it away, to not wait for the end of the day, to not wait for Friday, to not wait for the weekend, like today? And that's what I think if we can show up that way every single day, we will have lived the width, not just of every day, but every day becomes your life. And so your whole life is full of adventure and stories and moments, not just these small moments throughout our life.
Yeah. And I think it plays a lot of like, hey, everybody starts New Year resolutions on January 1st, or they say, on Monday I'm going to do this after the weekend.
Yeah.
And you're kind of measuring it and saying when that happens that day, that's when it's going to start. But why not start today? Why not live the width and get
Yeah.
the most out of today? Why can't we start doing great things today, stopping our burnouts, even if it's just you change your life by 1% a day, you're
Mhm.
3xing your life in a year. There's no doubt
That's
about it. And it's just those small little steps. But is there anything else on your mind that we should know about stress, burnout that we didn't discuss here?
I think that, every single one of us can define what success means to us, not externally, but internally. I would start there. And once you have a sense of like what it actually means, what would bring you the joy, the peace, the calm, the health, all those things that you're looking for, like you said, just choosing to be 1% better every day with intention. You don't have to do 100 new things all at once. You don't have to buy a bunch of gadgets. You don't have to go and spend a bunch of money to do anything. Just make small little changes. And over time, you'll be shocked and amazed at the impact that it can make.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
love
need to delay it.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, Aneta, last question. If you had one message to deliver to the world, what would it be?
Mm. This life is precious. Your life is precious. You were born for a reason. You have greatness inside of you. Um, Spend as much time being the best version of yourself, remembering who that is, not just doing the things that you think that you're supposed to be doing. And when we return to that and we focus on that, you'll be amazed at all the amazing things that you can do in this life and what you can experience as a result of it.
No, I love it. And one of the major takeaways that I've taken from the conversation today is live life for you and the rest is going to fall in line. I mean, that's a lot of what we were saying is focusing on yourself and making sure you're not burnt out, you're not stressed, listening to your body. So we are so grateful to have you on the podcast and looking forward to having maybe on in some time in the future again. That would be a blessing. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Wealth and Health Podcast. We hope we inspired you to make changes so you can live your best life. If you want to find out more about what we do, or if you want to have a holistic wealth and health financial plan, please call 456-833-7000. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it widely with your friends and family. Financial planning and advisory services are offered through Prosperity Capital Advisors, PCA, an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in the state of Ohio. J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management and PCA are separate, non-affiliated entities. PCA does not provide tax or legal advice. Insurance and tax services offered through J.L. Smith Holistic Wealth Management are not affiliated with PCA. Information received from this podcast should not be viewed as individual investment advice. Product discussions and illustrations are hypothetical in nature and will vary based on many factors, including, but not limited to, age, health, product, insurance carrier, and product design. You should consult the insurance carrier website and policy for detailed information. For information pertaining to the registration status of PCA, please contact the firm or refer to the investment advisor public disclosure website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov. For additional information about PCA, including fees and services, send for our disclosure statement as set forth on Form ADV from PCA using the contact information herein. Please read the disclosure statement carefully before you invest or send money.